Obviously, video games, a lot of parents try to control their kids and not let them play. How many of you, if you're parents, how many have you tried to regulate games? Right. Normal and good parents regulate their kids' video game play. Absolutely. You know what's really interesting though? A lot of the teens that have come my way are kids whose parents let them play no video games when they were growing up. We're being good parents and we are not allowing our children to be polluted, have their minds polluted by this garbage, and they don't let the kids play at all. A lot of the kids that come to see me are kids that weren't allowed to play video games, and then once they get older, they get more responsibility, they go over to their friend Jimmy's house, they go over to their friend Kathy's house, and they have access, they become addicts. And the video game play becomes a tool to evade parental control. It's the perfect thing. Mom and Dad didn't let me play, therefore now I'm playing. It was astounding to me. Absolutely astounding when I discovered. So I think because of the ubiquity of video games and because they play such a significant role in the culture, I don't advocate that you get rid of games totally. I think you need from an early age to teach your kids to use video games responsibly, but I've seen some very bad things happen when parents try to take them away completely. Because you know what's interesting? When you get to that level of policing and calling some kid's mother, you know, my son's not allowed to play video games, and then the friend's mother's playing policeman, you take something away from your kids in a culture where video games are so incredibly prominent. All right, outlet for aggression. So you know how there's the whole debate, like video games create aggression? I don't agree. I think that they most often create an outlet for somebody with aggressive or anger issues that just is not dealing with them. Dr. Robin and I were talking earlier that he had a client, that's not confidential, we didn't mention any names, where when they took the game away from the kid would get violent. Obviously something is going on there. I have kids that when they do poorly in Xbox 360, they kick in the walls or damage the property. They will yell and scream at their parents. So I think that you can, you watch the way a kid relates to the game, and it may give you a window into what's going on at a deeper level. There's something safe about video games. There's kids kind of merge into a new reality, and then it's okay to let out these other parts of themselves that they normally repress. Finally, discovery. And this is Chris's story. He's now 27. He works as an usher at a theater, and he's got an IQ, full-scale IQ of 140. And he never was able to pull it together. Chris is one of these people that can play video games for hours. He likes games like Legend of Zelda. Some of you have probably had kids. Does that ring a bell? Zelda? It's a game where you're going through this fantasy world and, hey, this rock there, if you come up to it and jump on top of it, a little fairy comes out and plays a flute for you. Well, that's the kind of player Chris is. He likes to discover every possible permutation that you can possibly imagine in the game, and the greatest thrill for him is finding something that nobody else had found. So it's discovery. Obviously, Chris is an incredibly intelligent person with an incredible degree of curiosity about the world, but he's never figured out a way to actualize his creativity in real life. He does it in the game. I want to pause for a minute and see if anybody's got a question or a comment bubbling up. Yes, ma'am?
With some addictions, going back cold turkey, or abstinence is sometimes seen as the way to go, but it doesn't sound like you're recommending that.
Well, that's an excellent question, and thank you very much. I've seen parents try to enforce cold turkey lead to some horrific consequences. And, if you had asked me that 3 years ago, I would have probably advocated cold turkey, but I've seen some really nasty stuff. The problem is that if you have a son or a daughter, say if you have a son, and your son is social at all and has friends or he goes to school, kids are going to talk about it. I mean, it's like, it's really, really hard. And so what you're sentencing your kid to do is to just kind of be marginalized from a lot of that talk. That's what boys talk about. you know, hey dude, I made it to level 24. I said, no way, dude, no way. That's what they talk about. You know, they talk about their exploits in the game. And so it's a very tricky situation. Now, if you have a kid where you think cold turkey is appropriate, you probably have a kid with some other emotional issues, and you may need to look at some inpatient programs. I had one mother recently whose son was bipolar and addicted to World of Warcraft. There's that World of Warcraft again. And she sent him to a wilderness program in Colorado, and that did the trick because the program itself is electronic free. And so she was doing it with support and so forth. But man, if you're going to do something like that and you got a kid who's really addicted and is exhibiting emotional disturbance along with the video game, I think you need to get a therapist involved in order to navigate through that. And get a therapist that knows the game, that understands. Because a lot of therapists do not understand this problem, and they advocate strategies that can be disastrous. So if you get a therapist who's been through this before and has a little experience, that would be my recommendation. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, let's take one more. Anybody else? It's a very well-behaved group, by the way. Okay, let's move on. There we go. All right, so here are just some questions. So I've come up with a list of 20 symptoms, 20 signs, and a lot of them you'll recognize. A lot of them are adapted from, you know, commonly accepted criteria for addiction of all types. So time war, you know, do you play for 20 minutes? Like, you think you played for 20 minutes and you've been on 3 hours? That's what happened to me. Time war. Lying. Oh, I wasn't playing. We know you were. We could hear it. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, a lot of lying. Changes or disruptions in sleep. Not getting enough sleep. Can't sleep. Goes to bed and then gets up because, gee, I forgot about what I could do in level 23 to get past it. Now I know. Now I have the answer. Craving games. Mom, I can't wait till I get home. I gotta play my. What are you gonna do? No, I gotta play my game. I gotta play my game. Okay, craving. Withdrawing from family and friends, we already talked about. Losing interest in hobbies, we already talked about. Gaming for more than 2 hours a day, 4 days a week. Unfortunately, that describes most kids, so you got to watch it. Poor performance in school or work. Physical ailments, backache, carpal tunnel, stiff neck, eye strain, nerve pain. An inability to see the negative consequences of gaming. There's nothing wrong. Okay? Buying games and items with real money. This is the one I forgot to talk about. If you're playing these games that have in-game currency, there are sweatshops in China and Taiwan where people do nothing but gain. They farm for money. They do things so they can get gold in the game, like whether it's World of Warcraft or a variety of others. And then they go on eBay and you can transfer your gold to somebody else. So you can sell your gold for real money. Okay, and so if I'm only at level 28 and I need all this gold to get all these other things so I can keep advancing, I can actually buy items and game currency with real money on eBay. So if you got a kid doing that, just be aware of that. You know, you see weird charges on your credit card, you may want to look into it. Eating meals at the computer. Sometimes they have a pee bucket in the computer. That'll also happen. I'm telling you, it sounds crazy. Glorifying games. Emotional disturbance when they're taken away. We've already talked about that. That's a big one. Mood swings. Okay, so you stop playing. Now, look, when you play those video games, if you play excessively, you're using up a lot of your neurotransmitters faster than you really should, and so you stop playing, and then you get into a malaise, you get a headache, you're lightheaded. That's what happens to me. I get in this malaise, and it's like I get this glassy look on my face. And then, what do you think I think the antidote is to that? To play more games, right? That's right. And then it just cycles out of control. Continued gaming despite consequences. You can't inability to cut down. Ever increasing amounts of time and obsessing on the game even when not playing. Okay. I have a Catholic priest who's come to see me, who's come to talk to me. I have a professor from the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, who is a video game addict. Obviously kids, married people, people in their 50s. It cuts across all ethnic, socioeconomic, religious groups, so forth. Obviously many ADHD individuals. We've already talked about that. And folks that have are diagnosed Asperger's also, and Asperger's folks tend to be incredibly intelligent, and Asperger's folks are often, they're not always plugged in to people as much, so sometimes that can be a problem. A lot of Asperger's kids have trouble. I have a kid who's Asperger's that I'm well acquainted with, and he's incredibly smart and helps me out a lot, and not into video games, and I'm very thankful for that. So that's something to watch out for.